Hey yo guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're checking out the new releases from The Ghost Inside, My Dying Bride, and High on Fire. So it sounds kind of funny to say The Ghost Inside, My Dying Bride.
It just lends itself to that.
It lends itself. And that ghost seems to be high on fire for whatever reason. But anyways, yeah, 3 different bands. 2 of them, we've covered them all on the channel. 2 of them we've done album reviews for.
Which is funny because both of those album reviews were in 2020.
Right.
Like in the same year.
Right, so that's My Dying Bride and The Ghost Inside. We've never done an album review of High on Fire. So this is our first time doing a full album, I guess first impressions, or covering an album at all for High on Fire, even though we've done a reaction or 2 of this band. So I started my day with High on Fire because out of these 3 albums, it was my most anticipated. It was the one I was looking forward to the most. I don't remember which song we reacted to. I know there was at least one.
That was Burning Down.
Burning Down, okay. And I remember relatively liking it. And I have an older album from this band, which I think is called Rumors of War, which I do really like. I think it's a great album. I put it on every once in a while. Actually, that might be the song title. I can't remember what the album's called. But anyways, good stuff. But I'm not a huge fan of this band. So I listened to it thinking, okay, I'm gonna get into it. It's gonna be awesome. Nope. Unfortunately, I found myself quite bored of this. Now, I think I think one of the reasons is because it's almost an hour long, 57 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think when you have music that's this sludgy and this kind of like
Groove focused.
but it's not like
It's not like a juicy groove, it's more like
juicy, good word.
Just a straightforward, we're just gonna play this thing, just one riff for like 6 minutes.
Yeah. Now these guys are kind of like subclassified as stoner metal, and I can see why. I think if you're listening to it stoned, this is a lot more passable. It's a lot more palatable in that mind state. But when I'm not stoned, I'm just like, oh, okay, get on with it. With that being said, there was a few things that stood out to me still. I mean, I didn't hate it. I want to put that out there. I didn't hate it. I was just a little underwhelmed. The first 4 songs, I was like, okay, like, I'm kind of like, you know, whatever.
I think Burning Down is one of them.
Maybe, but that's the thing. You mentioned this a million times on the channel this year. In the vacuum, bam.
Yep.
Once you listen to it on an album, it's like, oh, okay, this again, and this again, and that again, and that again. Track number 5, Karen Lik Yol, is an instrumental with a lot of heavy Middle Eastern influence in it. I thought that was really cool. And again, it's not the first time I've heard that style from this band. They've done it before, but I think it was well performed and well done on this song. So I was like, oh, finally, something that's standing out that I'm going, it's pricking my ears up a little bit.
They even did it earlier on this album. The bridge of Lamb's Bread has like that Arabic stuff in it. So it's like, they kind of alluded to it, and then they have this interlude.
Almost like a tease,
Interlude, I guess it's like 3 minutes. It's a song length.
I would just call it an instrumental, yeah.
And they have that instrumental, it's like, oh, here's the full thing, you know?
After that, the next track that stood out to me was track number 7 called The Beating. This one has a pretty cool drum intro, and it's a little bit more up-tempo than other songs. It's kind of more like thrash-oriented. And I thought that was cool. I was like, okay, now they're picking up the pace, now they're giving it some energy, and you know, my ears appreciated that. And then track number 10, Hunting Shadows, there's 11 tracks on this album, by the way. Track number 10, I thought sounded a bit different than the other tracks. I couldn't really pinpoint exactly what it was. I thought maybe it might be a cover or something, because it sounded so different. It almost sounded like they were playing somebody else's song. But that's doubtful. But either way, it was not even that it was entertaining to me, it's just I noted it because it sounded different. And that, to me, is at least something worth noting.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it was good or not, it was something that didn't sound the same as the rest of the stuff. So, I mean, I didn't hate listening to this album, but it was like, as my most anticipated one of the day, I was underwhelmed at the performance that I got.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't my first album of the day, but this is my first time checking out a High on Fire album. And I remember, you know, the first time hearing them, obviously, I'm like, oh, well, this sounds like Mastodon. And then I realized, wait a minute, Mastodon sounds like these guys.
Yeah.
Like they literally, they met at a High on Fire show, which is pretty funny. But so, you know, this is like definitely the kind of sludgy, groovy kind of, that's really the hallmark of this band from listening to this album. And I feel like it's perfect for when you want to just throw something on and just kind of just go with it. Whether you're just chilling or you're working on something and you need something for the background, it's perfect for that. And that's why I kind of like didn't feel so harsh on it, because I'm like, well, there is a really good purpose for music like this. It's not just like, what do you mean? It's just 6 minutes of these guys just going da 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 da. Like, even though that's kind of the vibe, you look at a song like Burning Down, which is the song that we reacted to, it doesn't really go anywhere. It's just kind of a 6-minute jam on this riff.
That's what these songs are. They're just jams, really. Like.
Yeah, and it's like, for some listening intentions, it doesn't really work. If you're trying to, like we do, focus on it, try to find all the best parts and really find an experience that's really amazing and that stands out, it kind of doesn't work as well for an album like this, because the album is just super chill, essentially, in that sense, right? But there was still cool stuff I did notice, like the bridge of Lamb's Bread that I already mentioned, the solo in Trismegistus. I don't know.
Trismegistus.
The solo in that song was cool. It was cool enough that I'm like, wow, that's a cool solo. So it was notable, right? I liked that. I also enjoyed the one in the title track, and the intro of the title track has all this percussion in it, which I liked, and it kind of reminded me of the percussion intro of Harvest the Garden by Mushroomhead, which I thought was really cool. That's a really cool Mushroomhead song. And I also had a similar note about the beating, that it starts with this cool drum fill, and it's a lot faster. And I feel like when you have an album like this that's really slow in that sense, you have one song that picks up and bam, it's one of the most standout songs because you're not ready for that.
Yeah, tempo change is all it takes, really, to
it really can
get somebody's attention real fast, yeah.
Exactly. So it's like, I feel like this album has its purposes, but you know, it's not the kind of album that you can really super duper dissect. It's an album to put on and vibe with.
Yeah. All right, so moving along, we got 2 more albums to cover. And the next one I think we should talk about is Immortal Binding by My Dying Bride. So, we did review this band before, and the last album we did got pretty unfavorable review scores from us. Like,
unfortunately,
3s.
The Ghost of Orion got a 3 from both of us 4 years ago.
So, I mean, I've been a fan of this band for quite some time, but I'm not like a devout fan. I don't know a lot of their stuff, but I've had several of their songs in my playlist over the years, and kind of just been like maybe just a casual fan, if you call it that. I'm not exactly sure where I'd pocket myself, but I've liked them. So last time we had a chance to review the album, I was like excited about it, but then it turned out to disappoint me. This album, I was excited for possibly a redemption, okay? And I feel like that might be there, because I actually had a really good time listening to this album. Okay. And I listened to it a couple times today, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. So overall, I think it has a really good mix of that slow, doomy stuff and the aggressive kind of like, I'd call it like black metal leaning type of stuff, because that's what the vocals kind of remind me of, like maybe a mix of death metal, black metal. Hard to really pinpoint. The album starts with a song called Her Dominion, and one of the things that stood out to me is the riffs in this song reminded me of a song from one of their other albums called The Misery, or Feel the Misery, and one of my favorite songs from that album is And My Father Left Forever, and the riffs in that song remind me of the riffs in this song. So I was immediately reminded of a song that I really like.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this is good, but it's not exact, so it's not like a ripoff. So I was like, okay, this is good. I can get behind this right away out of the gate. I'm already in a good mood for this album, right? Then, you know, Thornwick Hymn, track number 2 comes in. It's just, I don't want to go through track by track by track, because we don't really do that on First Impressions, but
there's only like 7 tracks.
There's only 7 tracks, but I got notes for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. So it's like almost every track had something that made me go, oh wow, that's cool. And it's all usually stuff like when the violin kicks in, it just hits the right spot.
The violin's very good on this record.
Exactly. Or they transition to, you know, like a completely different sound. Like you mentioned earlier, we had a talk before we started recording. There's songs that will play whatever, and then they'll switch almost to a completely different sound, and then it switches back again. Or things like that happen. And those are notable moments for me, because I just feel like they're done well, they're executed well, and they really give you the songs in the album a good contour. I like the singer's voice, I like the band's performances. Just overall, I just had a good time listening to it. I think there's stuff to unpack there, but I'm scared because we did My Dying Bride before and it didn't go well.
Yeah, like
So-
it's kind of dangerous, like, oh, you know.
How did you feel about it?
Well, you know, you're definitely right about the violin. I feel like any point that the violin was playing on this album, it was great. And I think it just elevated the songs every time it came by. You know, you mentioned that I mentioned that songs will completely switch it up, but it kind of threw me off because I'd be listening to a song and then this other section would happen that sounds like a completely different song, and I'd be like, how did we get here? What happened?
Too much of a 180.
I missed the transition here or something. Was I not focusing enough? Was it the song? Was it me? I don't know. What? Huh? So I found that weird. Not to say that the sections were bad, it's just the way that it just kind of flipped to something else just caught me off guard there. And you know, I noted that with Thornwick Hymn as well. Kind of just sounds like very different from Her Dominion, but I had notes for a lot of the songs as well. But I feel like at the same time, when you have a 7-track album and you have notes on 3 tracks, you almost have notes on half the album. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, if they do kind of anything in these tracks that are notable, then you'll have notes for a lot of the songs. But there's one song that really stood out to me the most on a first listen, and that is Unthroned Creed. This song kind of starts harsh, has a lot going on with the band, and then it grows slower and quieter until a point where the singer is whispering, which is near the middle. And then slowly it goes back.
Builds back up.
Builds back up. And I think that contour they have of that song is really, really cool. I'm like, wow, I love the execution of it. I think that is the way that really sells that song for me, at least for a first listen, is that they nailed it, and I really like that. Once again with the violin, the middle section of the Apocalyptist was nice, and I noted the violin being really nice there as well. So you have the second last track, A Starving Heart. It feels like it commits to what it is. It doesn't switch anything up too much. It's this slow, I think like 7-minute track, and I honestly thought like this would be a really good closer, but it's not the closer. There's like a 9-minute song that is the closer, and it kind of felt like the same thing for that last track.
Yeah, I felt like the last track has a kind of an abrupt ending, which I felt
that was interesting. Weird. It's just like kind of just
threw me off guard, and the first song, it looped, and the first song started playing. I went, wait a second. I went back and listened to it again. I go, is that how they're ending this? Like,
yeah,
they have the option and ability to do such nice closures, like they did on the previous track, and then they decide to end it like that. It almost seems like a mistake.
But it almost seems like intentional to the point that like, let's do something that's memorable enough that people will be like, whoa, what just happened? It ended like that? Whoa. The fact that we have the reaction that we do might be what they wanted.
Very possible, but who knows? Anyways, on to the last album for the day. Searching for Solace, The Ghost Inside. So it's been a while since I listened to this band. Honestly, it was since
probably 4 years.
The last time we did a review for them,
which was their self-titled album in 2020, and that was their return album after the incident that happened with them.
Yeah.
So this is their second album since their return. What did you think?
So I generally enjoyed it, but it's not exactly my cup of tea. So it's metalcore by definition, I guess, by nature, and you know, I like some metalcore. I'm not against it, but there's like a particular kind of metalcore that I like, and this is a little bit too run-of-the-mill, a little bit too generic for me. But I do think it stands out in a way. It doesn't sound like all these other metalcore bands. I think I was getting reminded a lot of Five Finger Death Punch listening to this album. So if you're a fan of that kind of metal, and you like metalcore, I think this is right up your alley. So for example, the songs that stood out to me that I made notes on that I thought were, you know, the highlights of the album was tracks 2, 3, and 9. So track 2 was Death Grip, track 3 was Split, and track 9 was Wrath. These songs I felt hit a little bit harder than other songs. They have, you know, that Five Finger Death Punch vibe to them. Not the biggest Five Finger Death Punch fan by any means, but I do like some of their stuff, and I think that element, whatever it is that I'm hearing, helps this band for whatever reason. But I also think that the song Split has a little bit of Born of Osiris influence in there, so I was singing a little bit of that. But overall, this is a little bit too of the metalcore side that I'm not a fan of, and almost a little bit emo-y, if that makes sense. And I'm not quite a fan of that either. So I did generally enjoy it. I didn't think it was horrible. I didn't want to like shut it off or anything. It played. I was like, okay, this is cool. There's some good parts. But I mean, I don't think this is an album that I want to spend a whole week with. And I actually don't remember what we scored the last one.
We actually had the same score for the last one. We both gave it a 4.5. So it was not that favorable.
Yeah, generally low scores. I feel like just based on a first impressions, if I had to review this album right now, I'd probably get a similar score, something like around a 4. If I had to give it a score right now. That's on a first impressions. Things can always grow on you never know. But yeah, I thought it was okay. I think there's definitely an audience for this, and I think that there's people out there that would really enjoy this, and maybe people will understand or not understand the Five Finger Death Punch reference, but I just kept getting reminded of them when I was listening to this thing. And I also don't remember if I thought that from the last one too, because I feel like I would remember that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if I were to score this right now, I'd probably give it a bit of a higher score. I did like this more than what my memory kind of tells me about how I felt about the last record.
Fair.
But, you know, you mentioned Split saying Bored of Osiris, and I get it. There's this arpeggio stuff constantly going on.
Yeah.
It sounded to me kind of like something you'd hear from The Algorithm, which is in the same vein to a degree. So it's like, you know, I get it. And, you know, the early chunk of this album I was enjoying. Like, overall, I generally liked it. I think it's good. It's metalcore by the books. I think it's a really good album, and perhaps by extension this band, for people who are getting into metalcore, this is a good one to check out. I like that Death Grip was a good one. That one hits hard. Going Under has a pretty cool main groove. I like that as well. And the main riff, A Secret, I liked as well. But I didn't really have many notes after Split, and I got to a point where I'm like, you know what? After the first few tracks of this album, it's kind of the same deal. That's kind of the hang-up that I had with this record, is that if you've heard the first like 4 or 5 tracks, that's basically the whole album.
Yeah.
So if you like those first like 5 or so tracks, then like you're gonna love the whole album. But I feel like nothing really develops past that point.
Right.
It's just the same stuff going on.
Okay.
But not bad. Like, I generally was like, yeah, I didn't really have like problems. I didn't want to shut it off. I was like, yeah, it's good. It's fine. Generally fine.
Okay, so with that said, that's the coverage of these 3 albums, and we've decided to review Immortal Binding by My Dying Bride. We're going to give them another chance to redeem themselves on the channel, but full disclosure, we are both pretty nervous about this because of what happened last time.
Yeah.
And I just think, and maybe this is just wishful thinking, but I think this album has more there than the last album did. I think the last album that we reviewed was perhaps a dud in their discography. I'm hoping that's the case, and I'm hoping this one really redeems the band, because they're a good band. I feel like there's a lot of potential there, and we're gonna spin it as much as we can for the whole week. And yeah, so with that said, guys, leave your thoughts down below. Let us know what you guys thought of these 3 albums that just dropped today. Let us know what you thought of our opinions and all that fun jazz. And we'll be back next week to give you guys our full and final review of the My Dying Bride album. But for now, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. Hit that like button. I'm Wild Self.
I'm TV Fish.
I'll see you guys in the next one.